you're going to have to show them that this pain right here is probably a cascade of other events that led up to that point. You're going to have to lead that treatment. And that's going to take a lot of guts and confidence. But that is one of the first ways you're going to have to display leadership. And that is how you're going to exponentially grow your success in your cash-based practice.
Welcome to the Dr. J.J. Thomas Podcast.
I'm Dr. J.J. Thomas. Thanks for joining us today. Today's episode, we're going to discuss the single most important skill that will almost guarantee your success in a cash-based practice. It's not what you think. So when we talk about a skill that's going to boost your success in a cash-based practice, you're probably thinking it's going to be a PT-related skill. But it's not. It's actually a life skill. It's basically leadership. Having the skill to lead people to success is what's going to be the single most important factor in almost guaranteeing your success as a cash-based PT. Let's talk about why. When we think about our world as cash-based PTs, one of the most important things we can ask ourselves is, why does someone choose to come to a cash-based PT, right? Like, why choose to come to us? Why choose to pay out of their own pockets and get reimbursed potentially, but that's a risk sometimes for them. Why would they choose to do that versus go to an insurance-based world? And there's two main reasons. There's two people that I find generally choose to pay for us as a cash-based PT. The first case is the patient that has failed PT and failed treatments everywhere else. They are just so fed up. They need someone to lead them to success. They don't mind paying because they value what a cash-based PT can do potentially, because the other methods, the other models haven't worked for them. They've failed. The second type of person that comes and chooses to pay out of their pockets for a cash-based practice is the person that doesn't have time to mess around. They are the athlete that is a sophomore in high school, and they have all this attention potentially for recruiting in college. Next year, junior year is recruitment year. They have this injury that's not allowing them to play. They are on a time budget. They don't have time to mess around. They're going to choose to see us because they need results fast. So what I'm going to explain is how in that population, there's three main scenarios that will highlight the importance of leadership as a skill when working with these patients. The first scenario is that what you're going to have to do with these patients is you're going to have to lead them to the root cause. Chances are, if they're paying for you, as I said, they're one of those two types of populations. They either failed PT somewhere else or lots of other places, or they don't have time to mess around. So you don't have time to mess around either. You better find that root cause. And so you're going to have to display excellent leadership in order to do that. And here's why. Most of those patients, both of those populations we just talked about, number one, the ones who failed PT, and number two, the ones that are, say, high-level athletes that need to get better yesterday, both of them are going to come with an additional piece. In addition to their movement analysis, in addition to how their body's presenting, they're going to come with fear. They're going to come with the fear of, oh shit, I'm paying cash for this and I'm on a timeline and nobody else has been able to get me better. And what if this person can't come either? And with that fear, they've spent a lot of time, days and nights, thinking, analyzing their body, trying to figure out what it is that's going to get them better, trying to really describe, well, maybe if I can describe this pain down my arm better, if I can describe that it's burning now and tingling then or whatever, they're searching for the right words. They're taking ownership in a way that maybe isn't that productive, but they're trying. And you have to commend them for that. But what that means for us is that they know a lot about their symptoms and their bodies. That's a good thing if you let it be, but it can be a distraction. They're going to come in with preconceptions of how and what they might need for treatment. It's going to be up to you to not get distracted by those preconceptions. They're going to come in and they're going to be like, I am telling you, I have this pain right here. I can touch it. I can feel it. It's right there. It happens when I grip. I know it. I know it so well. If you could just treat this. What you need to figure out is, has anyone else tried to treat that? Has anyone else touched it? If they have and they haven't gotten better, guess what? You're probably not that much better manually than the other 5 people that tried to treat them in that same approach. You better start looking for other causes. So despite the fact that they can feel this pain right here, you're going to have to show them that this pain right here is probably a cascade of other events that led up to that point. You're going to have to lead that treatment. And that's going to take a lot of guts and confidence. But that is one of the first ways you're going to have to display leadership. And that is how you're going to exponentially grow your success in your cash-based practice, is having the guts and confidence to lead that patient through a movement evaluation and through a treatment session that you're directing, through your professional skills and expertise that they hired you for. Patients come in, they think that they're trusting you and they want to trust you, but you have to direct them. You have to lead them to show them why it's okay for them to trust you. I'm going to give you a patient example that I had just last week. I had a patient come in and he's had recurring plantar fasciitis for years. And he says, and he's classic in the sense that I just described, he says, I've got plantar fasciitis on both feet. It's really, really bad on the left foot. He's an athlete. He's older, like my age, but, upper 40s. But he knows his body well. He's been an athlete his entire life, and he works out hard, and he knows his body. And he says, and he takes his shoe off. He's pointing to his left heel, and he's like, the pain is right here. And I say to him, have you had treatment for this before? Well, yes, I have. Gets better, but it comes back. Okay, well, that's something we need to consider, right? If it's coming back, are we really addressing the root cause? I haven't said this to him yet because he has to get there on his own. But so I'm asking him questions, right? I owe it to him to lead him, but in doing so, I need to be investigative. I need to find out exactly what we're dealing with. So other PTs, yes, they've treated the heel. It's gotten better, but it comes right back. So I say to him, describe the pain to me. What makes it worse? Oh my God, JJ, he says, I can't, as soon as I get out of bed in the morning, I'm afraid to put my feet down. Well, that sounds very plantar fasciitis-y, right? Like that's a very classic plantar fasciitis complaint. He says, then once I get walking, it's a little bit better. Finally, by the time I get to the bathroom, I can walk without holding my breath. Okay, great. Still sounds kind of plantar fasciitis-y, but I'm still wondering, why has he not gotten better with the treatments that these other very competent physical therapists have done? So I started asking more questions. Well, what other things make it worse? Like, okay, you wake up in the morning, it's worse. Tell me what happens if you are sitting for long periods when you go to get up. Now, not necessarily weight bearing, but just sitting. He says, oh my God, how did you know? When I get up, if I sit for an hour, I go to get up, it's the same thing all over again. Well, that's very interesting because it's not like sleeping, it's not like sleeping where his foot has been in a plantar flex position for hours. In sitting, he's in a neutral foot, but he's loading the spine. So now I'm starting to think, maybe there's another root cause there. So, okay. That's interesting. I do tell him now. Now I'm starting to lead him a little bit more. That's interesting. It's worse when you're sitting. And I give him my rationale. Your foot isn't really shortened there, but your back is loaded. Any history of back injury? He says, oh my God, yeah, I should have told you. 5 years ago, I had a debilitating back injury. He says, I don't know what happened. I went to pick something up. My back seized. He said, I dropped to the ground. I was home alone. I literally had to call my wife to come help me and he said, and I had to crawl to the phone to get her because I was in so much pain. I said, what'd you do for that? He said, well, actually, I just kind of rested and I did go to the doc. They gave me some medication. It felt better. Eventually, it just went away. Things don't just go away, right? I didn't say that to him because, again, I don't want to be condescending. But in my mind, I'm like, he has this history of back. That was 5 years ago. So I said, well, how's the back been since then? He said, actually, now that you mention it, I get these episodes almost once, twice a year. And it kind of goes out and then it settles. So it's similar to the plantar fasciitis, right? All of this stuff, I'm leading him to get to the answer on his own, right? I'm not jumping the gun and saying, oh my God, you have a back injury. We have to treat your back. I'm saying, I'm letting him get there on his own. We're leading him with questions similar to what you see on the TV shows where the attorneys are leading the witness, right? We're leading the patient to potential sources potential other sources that are maybe the underlying causes of a symptom that hasn't been treated successfully anywhere else. So then we take it another step and I say, you know what? I'm thinking there may be a back component. Let's do a test to see. So I put him in a slump posture, right? Slump neural tension testing. And I start with his right leg because his left leg's worse. We do the test. When he lifts his head, as you do with the slump testing, symptoms change in his lower extremities. He says, wow, when I lift my head up, that makes it better. Okay. I explained to him, you know what? That means there is some underlying low back issue. It may or may not be related. We're going to do some more tests. We go to the left side. Left side is so much more limited. I mean, I go to bring that leg up, it barely goes. Head is down. I ask him to lift his head. He lifts his head, same thing. Wow, that significantly changes my stretch on my leg. Okay, so I tell him, you have an irritability in your nerve. It's likely related to your foot. Let's do some other testing. So now I'm going to stand him up. I'm going to go to the low back and I'm going to see what I find there. Wouldn't you know, when we look at his low back, he has limited left side bend and there's an apex, so left lumbar is not closing at all. He has limited left extension quadrant. And when we test multi-segmental rotation, left doesn't move at all either. So that left lumbar is completely locked up from movement testing. He feels it. I say to him, how's that feel? Wow, that feels really limited. Interesting, that's your left side. Same side that's worse on the foot, right? Yes, it is. Okay, so he's getting there on his own. So here's where the real guts comes in. Here's where the leadership comes in. If you think there's a definitive relationship in an area that's remote to where the person's having pain, you owe it to them to show them that that's related. And you know how you're going to do that? You're not going to touch the spot that they feel pain in. What you're going to do instead is you're going to treat, like what we did in this session. We treated the lumbar spine that day. I took him, and I do dry needling, so the benefits of dry needling are that it gives a pretty dramatic result right away. So we dry needled his lumbar spine, and I did extra focus on his left lumbar because it was so locked up. He sat up, and I should have said earlier, he had a standing level of, like a low level, even without any movement, without weight bearing on his foot. He said in standing, he had a 3 out of 10 symptom, right? So I treat his left lumbar with dry needling. He gets up. As soon as he gets up, before I even get to do motion testing, he says, oh my God, my foot feels better. That's leading a patient to show them why they come to us, why they pay for us, why they choose to come to us versus an insurance-based practice where maybe they don't have time to find these relationships. That's the first way you're going to lead someone down a path that you're not going to be able to do in an insurance-based practice. And if you don't have the guts to do that, if you fall into the pattern that so many people do, even in the cash-based world, because they're afraid to not give the patients what they want, then if you touch that foot, if you even touch that foot in that same treatment, they're going to think that they got better because you touched that foot, even though they went to all these other therapists and they touched the foot and it didn't change long term. So if you can find an opportunity to show them that treating something remote, an underlying cause, how it's related, how their body's interconnected, if you can find that, you're going to successfully build your practice on so many levels. You're going to get results that your patients are going to want to holler at rooftops about. And your reputation is that, oh, she's relentless in finding the answer. He's relentless in finding the answer. That's the type of brand you want to build for yourself. And only a skill like leadership is going to allow you to do that. There's a second scenario here where leadership is going to be key in your practice. That scenario is similar to this one, and we mentioned it throughout the themes of that first example. But what that second scenario is you're going to use leadership to get buy-in in your patients. And that's exactly what I was talking about just at the end of that first scenario where, where the patient has to understand, fully wrap their head around what you're doing with them, where your treatment is progressing, and why you're choosing to do the things you're doing. When you have buy-in with a patient, when they fully understand, not here, but like here, they understand the path that you're taking them through, they're going to get better faster because they know and trust you. So the cerebral part of that is really important, the buy-in, the mental confidence in you. Number two, they're gonna actually do what you say. Like this patient, back to the previous example, the plantar fasciitis example, I gave him 2 exercises. I gave him, you may not know the exercises, but essentially they were spinal stability exercises. One was in a flex spine, one was in a neutral spine. They were basically spinal exercises. Now, those particular exercises I gave him are also going to have a flexibility role in his lower extremities, including his ankles, and I explained that to him. But I also made sure to tell him, the primary reason I'm giving you these is because they're going to improve your spinal stability, which is going to give you better outcomes for treating the root cause. So I left him with that, and you know what? He's going to do it because he has buy-in. And I make it very manageable for him. They need to be manageable. Like I said to him, look, I'm giving you 2 exercises. I want you to do 1 minute of each of these 2 exercises, once or twice a day, 3 to 6 minutes. Break it out like that, simple as can be. They know the time commitment. And then when you can foster that compliance with an exercise that's going to support your goals together, then they're going to be productive. They're going to have results, and it's going to feed that buy-in even more. So when he comes back next week, because I see most of my patients once a week, when he comes back next week after a week of doing those exercises and after a really helpful treatment that targeted the root cause, he's going to be so much better. He's going to have that buy-in. He's going to say, give me more. He's going to say, you know what? I'll spend 15 minutes now if I have to. Whatever you tell me, JJ, I will do, because I now see that you're not going to chase my pain. You're not going to just give me palliative care where you're just rubbing my foot, because you learned that didn't work. And you took the chance of maybe doing something that I didn't believe in at first and showing me how it worked. That's the buy-in. That's the beauty of buy-in. I want to give another patient example, just because I think this is so important. And we see it literally daily. I mean, repeated times daily in our practice, because we instill this pattern in all of our clinicians. Like, don't waste anyone's time chasing the pain. We have to, right off the bat, start by finding that root cause. And so another patient of mine I met with maybe 2 weeks ago, he said, you know what, JJ, I have this like left upper trap achiness here. It's pretty much always there, but it's really bad lately, and I can't turn my head to the left very well. So I said, okay, well, we're going to work on it. He said, yeah, I could tell, like absolutely tell that he really wanted me to rub that spot. Like, he's like, it's just right here. Like, he's pointing it to me multiple times. Like, he wanted to make sure I knew exactly where his fingers were. Like, it's right here. If you could just treat it right here, right? I said, that's great. I'm going to touch it in a second, I promise. But let's do some movement testing and make sure that we're going to treat the right area, okay? So I look at him in standing. He turns his head to the left. It's very limited. He goes about 30 degrees. I said, you feel that? Yeah, I feel it. It's right there, JJ. He's showing me again. I say, okay, bear with me a second. I want you to sit down. I want you to sit with your so I have him sit all the way back so his hips are flexed to 90 degrees now. Now turn your head to the left. He turns his head. Goes pretty far, actually. He's like, well, that's crazy. I tell him, it is crazy. Do you know why it's crazy? Because that highlights a deficit that's different than what you expected. What it highlighted is when we shorten the anterior chain for him, we allow the neck to move. We take some tension off that upper trap now. So I can use that test to show him, to get that buy-in and say, hey, listen, I know you feel it right here. I 100% understand you, hear you, believe you. But this test shows us that when we soften the anterior chain, hip flexors, abdominals, maybe even pec muscles, when we soften that, your neck moves further and it feels better, right? He says, yeah, it does. I said, all right, let's test it. So what we did treatment-wise that day, we massaged abdominals. We treated the anterior hips. I did some other movement testing to prioritize our time, like left hip versus right hip, left shoulder, is it pec related, things like that. So you're going to hone in on your skills, right? But all this comes back to leadership. I can't just be like, yeah, buddy, I know your left upper trap hurts. I need to rub your stomach. I need to lead him there. I need to show him why we're going to treat the anterior chain through the abdominals, hip flexors, and maybe the pec, and then retest him. So that's what we did. We massaged abdominals, we treated left hip, we treated left pec. We retested him. Immediately, left neck turned so much better. Like, he went from 30 degrees to 60 degrees easily, and he's like, oh my God, I feel so much better. So when you get results like that, and you resist the urge to follow the fear that the patients have of not getting better, like, I completely sympathize with patients when they come in. I know the face. They're like, it's right here. I'm like, I know. I promise if we do this and it doesn't work, I'll address that spot differently. But we have to do this first. If I went in and I treated that upper trap right away, guess what? It would be better temporarily, but it wouldn't stay and the motion wouldn't be better. So by making a motion change, we're proving to them, we're getting that buy-in, we're leading them and showing them why we're worth paying cash for. So the buy-in is that number 2 leadership skill, that number 2 highlight of when that skill of leadership is critical in your cash-based practice. Now there's a third scenario that is critical to exercise your skills in leadership as a physical therapist in a cash-based practice. And this one is really hard, but I'd say it might be one of the most important times that you're going to exercise this skill of leadership. It doesn't happen very often, thankfully. But what it is choosing to make the hard decisions when you need to. And that might be the hard decisions for your patients. So being a leader, we all know, in every type of the name, of the word, of leadership, right? We know that military personnel have to make hard decisions. Parents have to make hard decisions. Everyone in a president's have to make hard decisions. Everyone in a leadership role at times has to decide to make hard decisions that are for the good of the people that they're leading. So for our patients, what that means is there are going to be times where you can't necessarily lead them the way you know they need to be led. So either they don't understand the path the plan of care that you've decided is the right one for them, or they don't have the buy-in. Like maybe you went through the movement testing as we described, and it seems very clear to you, but they just can't get there, and they don't have that buy-in. You're going to have to let that patient go. You're going to have to say, I'm not saying right away, like give it time. Try to meet them there. Try to help them understand what you're seeing and how what you're seeing is going to get them better faster. But you cannot sacrifice your professional experience and let them drive the decisions and drive the path, the plan of care, just because they don't have the buy-in. I'm going to give an example of a patient. This patient I saw, it was probably 8 years ago. It was a long time ago, but I still remember her because it was a hard decision. She was an athlete, a young athlete, like college age, and she was a competitive athlete. And she had chronic pain. I was maybe the 10th provider she'd seen. She didn't respond through her report. She didn't respond to the other treatments and sessions she's had with other therapists, other clinicians. And so we did our eval, and I found some things that I thought were going to help her. And, she entertained me in the beginning. Like, I feel like she was actually classic with it was hip dysfunction. And there was a spot she always wanted me to treat. And I was like, look, same thing I just said, like, we're going to address that, but I have to address these other things first to really see and identify the relationships. So she let me the first couple sessions do that. But what happened is after about 3 sessions, that fear started increasing more in her. And I don't think I had the buy-in. Like, she wasn't really doing the exercises that I knew she needed to do. We were not connecting. We were not jiving for whatever reason. And then around the 3rd, 4th session, I actually started hearing her say things that made me realize there was a whole nother psychological component to her injury that had not been addressed. So now my line of questioning started changing a little bit. Like, okay. And I had to talk about the elephant in the room. I had to say to her, okay, listen, I'm hearing some things that are outside of my scope as a PT. I really think you need some professional help with either a psychologist or a psychiatrist to work through this with you. I said, are you working with someone for this? She said, no, I'm not. I went to one, but I didn't stay. I didn't like them, whatever. I said, listen, I'm going to have to draw a line here. I know I cannot get you better unless I co-treat you with someone who's capable of treating the psychological component to this injury. I said, I'm going to have to require you to go see a psychologist or psychiatrist in conjunction with me. I see movement deficits in you that I know we can treat and we can get better. But I also know that the brain is a really powerful thing. And if we don't address the mental side of things in addition, I'm never going to be able to get you better. She was really resistant. I said, listen, I don't want to shove this down your throat. Go think about this. I'll see you next visit. She came back next visit. And when she came back, it was as if she didn't want to talk about it. She was kind of blowing it off, trying to sweep it under the rug. But I had to lead her. I had to follow my instincts and my professional experience, and I had to go back to that. And I said, listen, how'd you do? How are you feeling about seeing the psychologist? She said, you know what, I'm just not there. I can't afford it. I said, look, you can't afford not to. Like, I will work with you on how our charges are here, but I cannot get you better unless we do this. She continued to resist, so much so that I finally said to her that day, listen, I am not going to treat you until we do this in collaboration with a therapist, with a psychologist or psychiatrist. I said, please don't come back until you've already scheduled an appointment with one. She was very upset. She begged and pleaded me. I said, listen, I have to follow you have to respect, you came to me because you respect my professional experience and expertise. Now you have to respect my opinion as a professional. So she eventually left begrudgingly. About 5 weeks later, she showed back up on my schedule. And I remember seeing her sitting in the waiting room, and I remember thinking, oh man, this is going to be another hard conversation. We're going to have to do this. So before I even brought her back to the table, I went over to her in the waiting room, and I quietly said to her, how you doing? I'm okay. I'm not any better. I said, okay, how's it going with your psychologist? She said, I didn't see anyone yet. I said, I was not unclear. I cannot see you. I cannot get you better until I have someone else treating you in conjunction with me for that side of things. So she left unhappy. But that's the thing, as a leader, you're not going to make everybody happy, but you have to follow your professional experience and instincts in a way that supports your values and goals, and a way that supports your mission, so to speak, right? So my mission is to get people better. And if they're getting in my own way, if they're getting in our way as a team, I have to let them go. Now, I don't have to just say, like, kick it to the curb, you suck, I can't get you better. But what I can say is, look, for whatever reason, you're not valuing my opinion here. And I'm not willing to sacrifice what I see is the need for you. Maybe I can find another therapist that you can work with. You know, I know tons of therapists. Maybe I can find someone that will get through to her better. And so that's what we did. She moved on. I actually never got a follow-up. But in my heart, I know that if I continued to treat her, I wasn't going to get her better. I was going to waste her money. I was going to waste her time. I was going to waste a spot on my schedule that I could get someone else better. So the right thing to do is not to hold on to those people. So as a leader, there are going to be times you need to let people go. And you need to say, you know what? As a leader, I wasn't able to find the root cause, or I wasn't able to get the buy-in, or I wasn't able to get them where they needed to be. And so I had to make this hard decision. Being a leader isn't always fun, but when you are a leader and you stick to your standards and you stick to your own expectations, the benefits are boundless. When you follow your own path and you follow your direction and you, as I said, are true to your own standards, what happens is people see that you have the confidence and the experience to get them better in a way that maybe someone else can't. And they also can be comforted in knowing that your reputation is such that if you can't get them better, you're going to find someone else that can. That is like priceless, right? I actually tell patients oftentimes, people know that when they say, how long is this going to take? You can't give them an answer on day one, right? Usually what I say to them is, listen, let me day one, they're like, how long do you think? I'm like, listen, let's do an evaluation. Let's see what we think we're dealing with. Even after day one, I'm going to need to see how you respond after day one to really get a better sense of how you're going to respond to treatment with us. I can tell you that in 4 to 6 sessions, if we don't see a significant change, that we're moving in the right direction, we're either going to change our plan or I'm going to find someone else who might be more appropriate to treat you. That is like a really important thing. But that's what a leader does. They establish the rules, right? And they expect people to follow by the rules. And if they don't follow by those rules, then they don't need to come. You're better off spending your time with people that are going to be on the same page as you. So try to get them there on your own. And if you can't, recognize that you're just not jiving. It's fine. Find someone else that can get them better. Do the world a good thing, right? And it'll come back to you. So all of these topics that we talk about when we talk about being a leader for your patients and being a leader in your practice, and how what this is really going to do is almost guarantee your success as a cash-based therapist, right? When we talk about this, there's an underlying skill set that I do want to mention, and I've mentioned it throughout this episode. It's essentially having confidence in what you do. And so I think that's one of the biggest barriers I see newer PTs in the cash-based world run into, is that they're afraid to almost stand by their own values because they feel like, oh, they're paying me cash, I better give them what they want. What they want is to get better. And so what they need is for you to figure out the best plan to get them better. And that's going to give them what they want, if that makes sense. But you have to have the confidence to do that. So the other thing I wanted to make sure I took the time for on this episode is to recognize that if for some reason you don't feel that confident to do this, you need to work on yourself in a way that's going to build that confidence. For most PTs, that means maybe you're going to put more time into continuing education, right? Maybe you're going to find a evaluative method that is going to help you establish that patterning that I was talking about earlier to show your patients the buy-in. If you tell a patient something's related, they're never going to really believe you if it seems remote and hard to see, hard to recognize. But if you show them, it's undeniable. If you repeatedly show them these correlations in the body, it's undeniable. So there are tons of continuing education methods out there that will help breed that. My suggestion would be, I'm happy to suggest a few. Feel free to DM me anytime, and I'm happy to recommend the ones that I took and other ones that I've heard about that are great. We are also launching our Primal University series starting in January 2024. So that will help, again, show you the methods, give you the confidence to be able to get that buy-in, to be able to lead your patients in a way that helps you show and demonstrate and go after that root cause. But ultimately, what all of this does is it sets us apart as individual clinicians. So when you lead your patients in this way, it sets us apart. It shows that we're not going to fall into the fear factor and just chase the pain. It also shows them we're not an a la carte profession. If we fall into that fear and we just massage out an area that's symptomatic, how does that make us different from from a massage therapist that maybe is chasing the pain and not looking for the root cause? So being a leader and helping a patient direct their care in a way that's actually productive for them rather than following what you think they want and chasing their pain, it's going to set us apart, and it's going to give results that will really compound your success as a clinician and ultimately your success in your practice. Thanks so much for listening. I hope this was helpful. Anytime you want to hear more about something in our cash-based world, learn from our experiences, please reach out, DM me, leave a message in the comments below. And you can check out our website, primalhq.com, for more information on Primal University and our ebook on cash-based practice success.